Hey guys, Bobby Bollinger here, and today I'm bringing you my predictions for the second week of NFL football. Last week I had about 47% correct. I was 7.5 correct to 8.5 wrong, thanks to the Browns and Steelers bumbling their way to a tie. Week 1 is pretty much a 50-50 for most people. You never know exactly what's going to happen, so this is about what I've come to expect from week 1. Week 2, things should get a little bit better though. But let's just move on. Bengals against Ravens in the Thursday night game. Well, both teams ended up winning, but we don't exactly know how good either one is because the Bengals offense went up against a terrible Colts defense and put up points as it should. The Ravens went up against a terrible Bills offense and just smothered them so thoroughly that Joe Flacco and that offense was able to put up 47 points on them. So we don't exactly know how good these teams are because they haven't faced the right competition to actually know how good these teams are yet. If I had to take a guess, though, I'd say the Bengals are a little bit more complete. I trust their offense more, and their defense isn't as good as the Ravens, but it's not so much worse that it makes up for the gains in offense. So I have the Bengals taking this 20-14. Now, Chiefs versus Steelers. The Steelers looked absolutely terrible last week. James Conner did well in the absence of Le'Veon Bell and put up good yards. He did fumble the ball, though, and with Ben Roethlisberger, good Lord, how many times can you turn over the ball, and how many times can you just fail to beat the Browns? They were given so many opportunities and just couldn't get anything done. That said, it was week 1, it was against a divisional rival, and crazy things can definitely happen when that occurs. So I'm not throwing the Steelers out to die quite yet. Similar, in a kind of opposite situation, I wasn't sure the Chiefs would be too good. I'm not gonna hold them up on a golden pedestal quite yet, but last week the Chiefs' offense was incredible. And when I say that, I mean Tyreek Hill was incredible. The dude's just insane. First year, he was mostly a gadget player who was especially good at it because of his amazing speed. Next year, he turned into a legitimate receiver. He was actually a good receiver who also happened to be incredibly fast. This year, the dude is out there making Odell Beckham look bad. It is insane what this guy can do, how this guy can move himself around, not just in speed, but in just body control. The dude has gone from gadget player to possibly best receiver in the NFL in just a matter of years, just like that. And Patrick Mahomes, he himself wasn't doing anything too insane, but I remember seeing one of the touchdown passes to Tyreek Hill, and good God, I have never seen a ball move that fast. I swear the dude broke the sound barrier on that throw. So the Chiefs, They have a ton of potential. I'm not going to put them on a golden pedestal, but I am going to have them beat the Steelers 31-24. Next up, Dolphins versus Jets. Dolphins surprised me and managed to get a win, although Marcus Mariota, Taylor Lewan, and Delaney Walker all had to go down for it to be possible. But they pulled off the win, and now they're going up against a Jets squad that just demolished the Lions. And a lot of people are singing Sam Darnold's praises after that game for leading them to those 44 points. No, he didn't lead them to 44 points. He wasn't bad. I think he did a good job. But at the end of the day, he had 198 passing yards. Like, that's not the guy who's leading the team. 198 yards is not how you put up 44 points. How you put up 44 points is the defense absolutely demolishing the opposing offense. And that's how it happened. So, when his defense forces him to actually produce or puts him into situations where he actually could produce, that's when we'll figure out what Darnold is. Until then, the jury, for me, is still kind of out on the guy. But, like I said, that defense crushed the Lions last week, and I doubt the Dolphins have a better offense than the Lions. So, Jets take this 24-14. Eagles versus Buccaneers. Jesus, Bucks. Or just Jesus Saints defense. That was a terrible showing by the Saints, and the Bucks took full advantage of it and pretty much dominated any fantasy board they could find. Now, will that translate to this week? I don't think so. The Saints defense was playing very poorly, while the Eagles defense is pretty good and played pretty well in week 1. So they'll be able to hold the Buccaneers back a lot more. Meanwhile, the Buccaneers defense did not play too well last week. That's the one fantasy board they did not have control of. And I can't say the Eagles have a better offense than the Saints because they do not. But it's definitely an offense that can take care of business against this kind of defense. And the Eagles defense has enough going for it, like, to possibly be the best in the NFL this year. And that'll dispatch the Buccaneers 24-10. Browns versus Saints. Oh, speaking of those Saints, how are they going to do this week after that a terrible, terrible loss? Like, this defense was supposed to have taken a big step forward, and that was not a step forward. That was a step back to what led you to be a mediocre team. But I don't think the Browns are really going to be able to take advantage of that unless the running game comes through, because whether it be from just the game plan or if it really is Tyrod Taylor, the Browns do not take chances for way, way too long. Like, it was bad how little they took risks against the Steelers. It is what caused them to lose. Well, to tie, but it's basically a loss for everyone. So, the offense might do better against the Saints. It really is going to rely on that running game. And the Browns defense is really good. They did a great job against the Steelers, considering their offense was going nowhere. But I I don't think it's going to be enough. I don't think the Browns' offense is going to take enough risks. And the Saints should be able to edge this one out 17-14 in a little rebound game where they get back to somewhat normal now that the rust is all gone. Alright, Colts versus Redskins. The Colts looked like the Colts last week. Andrew Luck is very clearly back and might just be better than ever. Luck is taking shots, but that's just who he is, and we're gonna have to live with that. Because he's most definitely worth it. He was going up against a really good Bengals defense, and he was carving them up pretty well. Our run offense was also doing okay in the first half, but the second half they seemed to just dial it in on us and just took any running offense away. So the Colts, they can definitely put up points, and we very easily could have beat the Bengals if that tight end just hadn't fumbled the ball. But our defense just really sucked. The run defense was terrible. Pass defense was, I don't think bad, but that might just be because the running game was doing so well that they didn't really need to pass. So the Colts are back to being the Colts, and we'll be better next year, I'm sure. As for the Redskins, they got a big win against the Cardinals, and a lot of people are saying Adrian Peterson did really, really well. I think he did maybe even a little subpar because, yes, he had 96 yards. But on the other hand, he only had 3.7 yards a carry. So it's not really he's back to form. It's more of they're giving him a ton of chances to get those 96 yards. And granted, 3.7 isn't horrible, but it's not worth the hype people are giving him. That said, he should be doing pretty good against the Colts defense from what we saw against the Bengals. In this game, I'm going to have to say the Colts win 31-24 because the Redskins offense, it can be maybe as good as the Bengals were against the Colts at least, but the Redskins defense is not as good as the Bengals defense, so the Colts should be able to move the ball at will a little bit more easily, which is just enough. Alright, Chargers versus Bills. This one's going to be fun. Nathan Peterman returns against the team that picked him off 5 times in the first half of a game. Coming off of Nathan Peterman's worst game. Somehow. The Chargers did disappoint last week, but they also did put up points, and they kind of hung in there on offense. Defense, it sucked. The secondary was worthless against Tyreek Hill, but they did hold Travis Kelce to 1 catch for 6 yards. They got that. And we don't really know how the Chargers' run defense is quite yet, just because, well, the Chiefs didn't really run. They were just throwing it all over the place, which is weird, but whatever. The Bills, I don't think they can take advantage of that possible weakness in the defense, though, because, well, we saw what happened against the Ravens. It was not pretty. It was sack central in that place for the Ravens. It was just so so bad. And while the Chargers defense is weakened because Joey Bosa's out for this week and probably a few after that, this defense is still good enough to stop an offense that has nothing going for it. And the Chargers offense it should be good enough to handle the Bills, especially when the Bills aren't doing anything themselves. So I take the Chargers 28-10. And somehow that's an improvement for the Bills. Next game on the list, Vikings versus Packers. Oh, Aaron Rodgers. Will he play? Will he not? Will he be as good as he was against the Bears or not? So many things that are just really hard to tell. But if Aaron Rodgers does play like he did against the Bears, will the Packers win? I'm not exactly certain either way, because I'm not sure if the Bears are better or worse than the Vikings are. Like, on the defensive line, are the Bears better or are the Vikings better? I don't really know. It's hard to tell. Is the Bears secondary better or the Vikings secondary better? It's hard to tell. Now on offense, the Bears do have the better offensive line and the better running backs, so they have the better running game, period. But the Vikings have the better quarterback and better receivers for sure as well. So whether you think the Vikings or Bears are the better team basically comes down to, do you like the running game more or do you like the passing game more? For a defensive team, it's getting hard to tell nowadays. It used to be undoubtedly the running game. Lines have kind of blurred now, though. So, in terms of player quality, the Vikings and Bears, we're not exactly certain which one's better or which one's worse. However, I do think that the key difference is the play calling. The Vikings, I think, are just better coached, better play calling, and they wouldn't have made the mistakes the Bears made against the Packers. Like, the Vikings love running the ball. Even when they're not good at it, they want to run the ball, and they do it a lot. And that might hold them back, but also, if the Bears had run the ball more, they probably win against the Packers. So if the Vikings get into that kind of situation, just like the Bears did, the Vikings would probably end up winning, even if the teams are technically the same quality. So I'm going to take the Vikings here. I'm going to say 28-17 because that injuries are kind of they get worse as they go on until they actually heal kind of deal. So I think Aaron Rodgers won't be as good, and the Vikings will be better coached and better play callers than the Bears were. Panthers versus Falcons. The Panthers put on an interesting show against the Cowboys, and the Falcons put on an interesting show against the Eagles. Here I'm giving it to the Falcons 24-10 because while the Falcons' offense was really limited by the Eagles' defense, the Panthers' offense was only being limited by the Cowboys' defense, and I don't think the Cowboys' defense is bad per se, but it's definitely not as good as the Eagles' defense was. So Falcons defense is probably far superior to what the Panthers have going, even with their red zone problems. Meanwhile, the Panthers defense did a really good job against the Cowboys, but it's a Cowboys team with no wide receivers and is missing about 2/5 of its offensive line. The Falcons' offense is a lot better than the Cowboys' offense, and it should show in this game. Texans versus Titans. Well, Titans are screwed. They lost their quarterback, their best offensive lineman, I believe. He's down with a concussion. Might actually be back for this game, though, so that might not matter. But they're also missing their best receiver. So you don't got your quarterback, you don't got your receiver, and you may not have your best offensive lineman. There's going to be some issues there offensively. Defensively, they weren't bad, but the Texans have a lot more going for them than the Dolphins did, and the Dolphins won. So I have to give this to the Texans 28-7. The Titans just lost too many offensive pieces. Next game, Cardinals versus Rams. Well, the Rams, for the first half, it was looking like this super team was gonna collapse. Then the second half rolled in and they looked like a super team again. They beat the Raiders 33-13, not allowing a single second half point. And they did a really nice job. They looked pretty good, everyone. The Cardinals, they lost a very embarrassing game to the Redskins. And I don't think the Cardinals are going to be too bad here, but the Rams have too much talent to actually lose this game. I give it to them 34-20. Lions against 49ers. Oh boy, Lions, that was interesting, wasn't it? That was interesting. You know, it started off so well for you guys. First play of the game, you get a pick six, you're up by 7 points, and then it all goes to crap. The offense, it couldn't do anything. It was just so... To the Jets, it was insanely predictable because they said we basically stole their signals. So the Lions, they have an issue on offense. Defense, I don't think it's that great, but it's hard to tell when they're always basically playing on the wrong side of the field. The opposing teams were given such good starting positions that it's hard for a defense to function. So I don't think the Lions are too good, but the jury is technically still out there. Meanwhile, the 49ers had a close loss to the Vikings. It was bound to happen. Jimmy Garoppolo looked kind of bad in it, but it is against one of the league's best defenses, so I'm not going to be too harsh on him. And the 49ers did look like they could legitimately challenge the Vikings. So they can most certainly challenge the Lions and beat them 31-24. The game being so close because the Lions, they're not going to lose like that again. Raiders versus Broncos. Speaking of losses, the Raiders actually looked pretty good in the first half of the game. Then the second half of the game came. And guess what? They couldn't get any pressure. I wonder why that is. Regardless of the reason why, which nobody can explain, the Raiders just fell apart in that second half. It wasn't even just defensively. The offense didn't score a single point. They just have major problems with them. Meanwhile, the Broncos actually ended up getting the win against the Seahawks. It was a very close thing, though. And it is kind of hard to tell what the Broncos are like in terms of quality because of that. Like, we don't know where the Seahawks are in the overall picture, and having such a close loss to the Broncos when we don't know where the Broncos are in the picture, it doesn't exactly help. So both of these teams are like question marks, and they're still question marks. This game should help tell us where the Broncos are, maybe, because there were a bunch of questions about the Raiders too before the Mac trade. Now they're kind of on the low end of the league, but whatever. I think the Broncos' defense should have enough to stall out the Raiders' offense, and Raiders' defense just doesn't have enough going for it to make up for that, even against Broncos' lackluster offense. So, Broncos 21-13. The Patriots against the Jaguars. Ooh, this is going to be a nice little rematch. Why it's not the Sunday night game, I don't know, but whatever. The Patriots looked pretty good against the Texans in the first half. Second half, they really slowed down, though. And the Texans nearly made the comeback, but they didn't. And as for the Jaguars, it was kind of just, they were generally in control their whole game. Like, they started out well against the Giants, and they just kind of held the lead for a while. The Giants were able to get yards against them, didn't translate it to the most points, and it was a pretty good showing for the Jaguars. Now, how good the Giants are, we'll see, so we can't exactly say where the Jaguars are quite yet. And they may or may not have Leonard Fournette. The dude's hamstrings just seize up on him so much, I guess. They just have a lot of issues. But while he was in against the Giants, he did a good job. And even if he's out, the Patriots' run defense is not good. Like, even last week, it didn't stop too many rushing yards. It did enough, but there were definitely problems, even though the Texans were trying to throw the ball a lot more than run it. So I think with the Jaguars being so committed to their run, that they'll be able to control this game kind of like they did against the Giants. And I give it to them 20-17. They get their revenge, but it's close. Speaking of that Sunday night game, we have Giants against Cowboys. I can see why you'd want this to be your Sunday night game. But come on, the Patriots and Jaguars are right there. It's the perfect game for this. Oh well. The Giants against Cowboys. It sounds, in theory, like a really good idea, like a really good game. But I just think the Cowboys aren't going to be able to hold up. Like, before their offensive line fell off from injuries, I think this would have been a good game, but as it stands, they cannot keep pace with the Giants. The Giants didn't get too many points, but they did get a lot of yards against a really good Jaguars defense. Saquon Barkley in particular was doing a pretty good job, yes, in spite of his offensive line. So he should be getting his yards. The Giants receivers should be getting their yards. And the Cowboys just don't have the offense to keep pace when their defense isn't quite good enough yet to carry that kind of offense. So I give this to the Giants in kind of a blowout, 32-18. And the final game of the week, Seahawks versus Bears. This one's also interesting because are the Bears going to collapse again? Are the Bears actually that good? It's still hard to tell. And it's still hard to tell where the Seahawks are, so we're not going to learn too much about either team from this game again. I think the Bears will take it 28-21 just because they should be able to get so much good pass rush against the Seahawks. But I'm not exactly certain how good the Bears are and if the mistakes they made against the Packers are going to be repeated or not. For now, though, I'll have the Bears going 28-21. Until next time, good day.